The latest, shall we, from Francesco Rizzuto in Manchester, Professor of Law at the University of East London. Thank you very much for talking to us on this Friday evening. Let's just assess where we are then after this week. China signalled it's got no interest in continuing escalation. Where do you think we go from here?
I think that we're going to a point where the Americans and the Chinese will have to talk in the next 2 or 3 weeks. And of course, they will try and de-escalate. But that won't really solve Mr. Trump's problem, which is, of course, to reduce American dependence on Chinese imports. That's going to be extremely difficult to do. I think that's where we're going. I think the other place we're going is that the Chinese will try and smooch the European Union to make sure that the European Union don't, if you like, get too close to Trump, notwithstanding the insults, notwithstanding the tariffs that he's imposed or threatens to impose on the Europeans. So I think that's where we're going. In the longer term, quite honestly, the world trading system has ended up in this mess because essentially the Chinese have not played by the rules since they entered the WTO. There's no two ways about that. But the Americans have basically undermined the rules-based order that was the WTO by, for example, not appointing a member of the appellate body. In other words, the adjudicatory system in the WTO. So we have a cheat on the one hand and somebody who wanted to bust the system by not supporting the system on the other, which leaves us in Europe and everybody else in the rest of the world in a bit of a pickle.
Is there consistency, or is there even inconsistency with what Donald Trump is suggesting that these tariffs have been all about? We heard Caroline Levitt only in the last couple of hours saying that the money that's going to come in is going to be used to pay off the debt that the US has. Yet Donald Trump always talks about bringing manufacturing jobs back to the United States. Are those two things compatible?
Perhaps in the long term, not in the short term. This is not going to happen overnight. And in the meantime, by the way, the American citizen, particularly in his supporting states, are going to suffer. Trump blinked. He blinked because some of his supporters were saying things were getting really bad, because he was getting feedback from members of his party in Congress and some of the states that people were getting rather worried. He was getting really worried because the Chinese hold a great deal of the American debt. And if they started playing around with that, that would really cause trouble. Of course, there's a contradiction. It isn't that easy to undo the last 3 decades of globalization and the way in which supply chains have integrated, the way in which companies like Apple, for example, or the American motor manufacturers depend on components built all over the world and traveling across frontiers 3 or 4 times. So it's not that easy, and I don't think it's going to happen. I also don't think that they factored in the impact of modern technology on employment patterns in the States. So you're repatriating manufacturing to the United States perhaps in 3, 5, 7 years. But how many jobs will that create? Will it create any jobs?
We also heard from Caroline Levitt today talking about these 75 countries that are queuing up. The phone keeps ringing. They're there to do a deal. Is this a little bit of smoke and mirrors, do you think? Was this always all about China?
Well, it was about China and it was about Europe. Make no mistake about that. China was the key baddie in all of this, but so were the Europeans. Obviously, the 75 states, look, there are many states who simply lack the means, if you like, the capacity to withstand American pressures. I don't know whether 75 states have gone to the United States to do what he suggested they were doing the other day. I won't repeat what he said. You know, with this administration, frankly, it's difficult to know what is true and what is fake, what kind of narrative they're coming up with. But what it does do is create fundamental uncertainty.
Francesco, thank you very much for your insight this evening. It's been interesting. Thank you.
Pleasure. Good night.